Egypt is on the brink of a volcano. That scary declaration today from Cairo, as hundreds of thousands of protesters again march across the country, demanding that President Morsy step down. These now are live pictures of Tahrir Square. And we now have a direct warning to the president and to the opposition from the army, which has given them 48 hours to resolve their differences and, quote, meet the people's demands, or the army says it'll step in. But what that means exactly is not clear right now. Given the ultimatum, Morsy and his prime minister met with the head of the armed forces today. And the military has made its presence known to demonstrators as well, with helicopters flying over the crowds, Egyptian flags dangling below them. The protests mark the one-year anniversary of Morsy's inauguration as the country's first democratically elected president. It is the third time in 3 years that people have taken to the streets en masse. First, in January 2011, to topple President Mubarak, and then a year later against the military, which took power after the revolution. The people's grievances are many, but high on the list is an economy in the dumps and a president perceived to be tacking solely to his base, the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, watching from his swing through the southern part of this continent is President Barack Obama, who weighed in from Tanzania, expressing relief that violence has been far less than predicted in Egypt, but calling for political compromise.
Although Mr. Morsy was elected democratically, there's more work to be done to create the conditions in which everybody feels that their voices are heard and that the government is responsive and truly representative. And so what we've encouraged the government to do is to reach out to the opposition and work through these issues in a political process.
Indeed, we are expecting a statement from the presidency on this matter, and we will bring it as soon as we have it. But meantime, deep divisions remain clear. At the Muslim Brotherhood headquarters in Cairo, for instance, overnight protesters attacked it with bricks and Molotov cocktails, leaving a ransacked, smoking shell today, and looters escaped with desks, sinks, air conditioners and more. We'll go straight now to Tahrir Square and our Ben Wedeman. Ben, how are the people reacting to the military ultimatum?
Well, the people in Tahrir Square reacted quite positively. In fact, as the speech was being made, or the statement being issued on Egyptian TV, we heard repeated cheers coming from the crowd. And since that announcement was made, we've had more and more people coming into the square. And as you mentioned, these helicopters flying overhead with the flags underneath, a very clear signal from the military that they sympathize with the people in the square. At least that's how it's been interpreted here. So a very enthusiastic response from most of them. Some of them worried that we're really just going to go back to the 12th of February 2011 when the military was in control and in control for almost a year and a half afterwards, and that period saw frequent clashes. But certainly at the moment, these people here quite happy with this latest development.
Well, Ben, my question is, why do they think the military is on their side? It called for both the president and the opposition to resolve their differences. And also, what do you read into the military's declaration?
Well, as far as the military goes, many Egyptians look at it as the strongest institution in Egypt, the institution that above politics can impose order in a sense, and therefore that explains why so many people are enthusiastic. Now, if you look at the statement carefully that was made by the military, it's clear they're losing their confidence in President Morsy. They see that he has huge opposition in the streets. If you go to the demonstrations also in Cairo that are supporting President Morsy, they really are much smaller than what we've got going on behind me. Now, where does it go from here is not altogether clear. The military really has told not just President Morsy, but the opposition, you've got to get your act together. A week ago, the military put out a statement saying exactly that. If you don't come together and deal with Egypt's problems, we may have to step in. Now they have less than 48 hours, and it's going to be difficult for both the opposition and President Morsy to deal with their bases and one another to try to meet the army's very clear demand.
Of course, the opposition, as you and I know, and we've covered it for a long time, is incredibly fragmented and definitely not unified, neither with their message or their different sides. But what do we expect from the presidency? We're all sitting here waiting for a statement from the presidency. What do you think is going to come out there, or what are your sources telling you?
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood has said that they are studying the statement by the army. That might not be what the army wanted to hear from them. But within the movement itself, there's a danger of real splits, because it's important to keep in mind that the Muslim Brotherhood had a series of electoral victories culminating in President Morsy's election in June of last year. This is a historic opportunity for the biggest, the best organized, and the oldest Islamist movement to take power, to show how it can rule. And now it suddenly sees that this potential experiment, is slipping between their fingers, as millions of Egyptians, it seems, have come out in the street in clear rejection of the program, the project of the Muslim Brotherhood. Egyptians are saying, this is not us. This is not our identity. This is an identity that for many of them is imported. It's a Wahhabi identity from Saudi Arabia. And many people in the square will tell you, we are Egyptians. That is our identity. We are Muslims, we are Christians, but we're Egyptians before anything else.
You know, Ben, again,
Christiane?
you and I were there, and along with much of the world, we said that what happens in Egypt will, you know, set the tone for the Arab Spring. And everybody thought that Egypt might be like Turkey, you know, sort of an Islamist democracy, or a democracy with an Islamist flavor. And now, obviously, the deep cynics and the pessimists are probably saying, see, I told you so, Muslim Brotherhood can't run anything. But what do you think about the complaints from, for instance, the president and others, about the organized opposition from the very beginning, from what we like to call the deep state, the Mubarak era ministers and institutions that still existed to an extent?
Well, there's no question, Christiane, that the job of running Egypt as the president has got to be today one of the most difficult jobs on earth. The Muslim Brotherhood for years was persecuted, pursued, jailed, tortured, and then sometimes killed by the regimes in power here in Egypt. They won an election, they took over the head of state, and they suddenly found that much of the bureaucracy, the police in particular, to a lesser extent the army, the ministries, the local governorates were opposed to them. They were afraid that they would impose their people from the Muslim Brotherhood on every level of the bureaucracy. So you had a severe pushback from all of these. And the police is a classic example. The police, they were the ones, they were the tip of the spear in the war of the Egyptian state against the Muslim Brotherhood. And what we've seen now is that, for instance, today at the headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood, while those attacks were taking place, the police reportedly joined the attackers. And when the headquarters was trashed, scorched, burned, and defaced, then the police came to guard the ruins. So if you're president of Egypt and you can't trust your police, and you're not sure about the army, and you know the bureaucracy doesn't like you, you're going to have a very difficult job at running this very complicated country.
Ben,
Christiane?
thanks as always.